So here is the thing. When push comes to shove and I have to commit to a tech stack for a real project, I'm still going to choose the most popular frameworks and libraries. Yes, we all are excited by the performance gains Qwik has to offer with its reasonability approach or by the ease with which we can build and deploy Dino apps. However, when real results are demanded, I'm still going to use tools such as NextJS or Firebase. Let me explain why. A production environment where your clients impose a tight schedule and cost efficiency is not the best place to take wild chances. So, why use NextJS when there are so many modern, more performant alternatives out there? Well, the pragmatic short answer is that NextJS is the safe choice. The longer answer is that NextJS is far from being a deprecated or obsolete framework, and the team behind it is more active and engaged than ever. The release of version 13 is proof of that, so let's look together at some of the main concepts in the latest release, and, hopefully, we'll get an idea of some of the things we can build with Next in a very short period of time. Installing and setting up JavaScript projects is pretty easy these days, since CLI tools are more powerful than ever. So we'll skip over this part and jump directly into the project. If you worked with Next.js in the past, you are probably familiar with the old file structure and the pages directory. However, we'll be using version 13's app folder, which comes with a couple of advantages. As a quick FYI, note that at this time, this approach is still in beta and is not suited for production. However, you should really get used to the app folder, since this is the framework's direction moving forward, and we are currently in a transition period aimed to avoid disrupting development with too many breaking changes. So, in the app folder, I created a head.tsx file where we can define anything you'd usually add in the HTML head tag. Then, in the layout.tsx, I defined a simple component which will act as the general layout for our application. Finally, in the app/page.tsx, I added just some basic logic we'll get back to in a second. If the concepts behind meta frameworks are new to you, these naming conventions might look a bit weird. In short, Next.js is using something called a file system-based router, which will resolve request URLs to various files inside the app directory. The special page file will be mapped to the path, the layout file will be used to decorate the page component, and the nearest head file will be inserted inside the layout. Using React and Next.js to display static or dynamic content is very straightforward, so let's focus on something a bit more interesting. Backend support. You'll probably hear a lot of people saying that meta frameworks can handle both the front-end and the backend workloads these days. While this is true to some extent, there are some basic server workflows only a proper backend can handle. I'm thinking here of things such as an authentication system, saving information in some sort of data storage, uploading files, and more. On my channel, I have a lot of videos discussing the benefits of backend as a service solutions. Tools such as Supabase, AppWrite, or PocketBase are gaining a lot of traction because of the speed of development and the convenience they offer when it comes to maintenance and deployments. Anyhow, Firebase is still the OG in this space, it offers a wide range of features and is backed by Google. We can use the free tier for any type of prototyping, and setting up a new project is straightforward. Once we have the app details in place, I'm going to paste the config in a Firebase service file, and then we'll export an auth and a DB object. You will see in the next minutes how we can use this to seamlessly implement features such as creating accounts, authenticating users, or working with the database via these objects. Okay, so let's jump into the login page under the app directory and create a login or a registration form. A couple of things to keep in mind. User interface wise, I want to leverage existing tools as much as possible and avoid spending too much time writing unnecessary styling rules. As a consequence, I'm using NextUI as a component library and TailwindCSS as a CSS utility library. Between these two, I should be able to build UIs without touching CSS at all. I don't have anything against writing CSS, but the whole topic of this video is efficiency, and leveraging the tools I just mentioned is one of the smart things you can do to save time and energy. In the login component, I added the necessary internal state to perform authentication requests. The toggle function will help us update the UI and display the appropriate message depending on the action we want to perform. In the start function, we are either going to call a login or a register method depending on the view flag. Let's take a quick look at the JSX used to build this login form, and then we'll jump into the auth service and see the Firebase authentication in action. So, as you know, any React component will return JSX used to build the actual DOM elements. Nothing too fancy here. I'm using NextUI components to display form inputs and buttons, and some TailwindCSS classes to adjust the layout. Quick side note, NextJS 13 makes use of server components and will render all components on the server. However, you will run into scenarios when various libraries cannot run reliably on the server. In such cases, you can force a component to be rendered only in the browser with the useClient directive added at the top of your file. The topic of rendering strategies is a fairly complex one, and I'm getting into more details on this matter in the video linked into the top right corner. Back to the code, let's work on authentication. Guess what? You are in for a big surprise. This code is extremely straightforward, and we are basically creating an abstraction over the existing Firebase methods. You could actually call these methods directly from your component, but in my experience, it is a good thing to decouple vendor logic from your UI, since you might want to switch implementations at a later time. Anyhow, Firebase does all the authentication work for us, and you can't really appreciate the magic of this until you have to implement authentication on your own. The onChange method probably caught your eye. We'll use this to check the state of the current user and update the UI accordingly. In the header nav component, which will only run on the client, we are subscribing to the auth change event. When we end up on a page containing this component, the Firebase auth status is checked, and, depending on the result, will display either a login button or a create article button in the header. So yeah, authentication is easy, but, as you'll see in a second, storing data is easy as well. Before working on the functionality that allows us to store and retrieve blog posts from the database, I'd like to take a second and ask you to help me fight the YouTube algorithm by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Back to Next.js, in an article directory, I created a new page.tsx file where we'll allow users to create blog posts. A second ago, you saw that we can capture user input via state hooks and listening to onChange events. However, in the real world, forms can easily grow in size and complexity. So, just to be on the safe side, it is always a good idea to use a more efficient approach than manually handling all fields and inputs on your own. You'll find various form libraries out there which can handle state and validation in a more declarative manner. When the user submits the form, the create article method is being called. Let's jump into the blog service file and implement the create article method. We'll use Cloud Firestore, a scalable, flexible Firebase database, to save our data. Compared with other backend as a service solutions, such as Supabase, which rely on relational databases to store information, Firestore is a document-based NoSQL alternative. We'll simply create an article collection in the UI and make some changes in the permissions section. The setDoc and getDoc methods will allow us to simply store and retrieve documents from our collection. I'm just looking at the basic use cases here, but note that Firestore covers all your needs from complex data querying to index creation and real-time support. Okay, finally, let's create an article slug directory which will create a Next.js dynamic route for us. Whenever a user will access this path with an appropriate post slug, we'll display the article in the page. A couple of things to note here. First of all, we can get the slug from the request path via the properties passed to the component. Second of all, viewArticle is not a client component. What this means is that all the code, including the Firestore fetch call, will be executed from a Node.js backend server. The article is populated via the getData method, and we are simply rendering the title and the body in JSX. So, in a very short period of time, we were able to create a full-stack app using extremely popular libraries. The next step would be to deploy our Next.js app in the Vercel platform. So, with just a few lines of code and a couple of clicks, you'll end up having a basic app or a prototype you can showcase to the world. Let me know in the comments what are your thoughts about Next.js and Firebase, and until next time, thank you for watching.